January 1940, Bay of Whales, Antarctica. A 55-foot vehicle rolls down a timber ramp off the deck of a Coast Guard cutter. Halfway down, the wood splinters. One wheel punches through. The driver floors it. The machine lurches forward onto the ice shelf. The crew cheers, then the tires start spinning. The vehicle sinks 3 feet into the snow and stops. It never really moves again. The Antarctic Snow Cruiser, 55 feet long, 37 tons, built to drive 5,000 miles across the bottom of the world. It made it 92 miles. All of those miles were driven in reverse. Then it was abandoned. Then it was buried. Then it disappeared. Nobody knows where it is today. The idea started with a near-death experience. In 1934, Dr. Thomas Poulter was second in command on Admiral Richard Byrd's second Antarctic expedition. Byrd had stationed himself alone at an advanced weather base deep in the interior. Weeks passed. His radio transmissions became erratic, confused, almost incoherent. Poulter organized a rescue party. They had a small tracked vehicle, but it broke down constantly. They turned back twice. On the third attempt, in total darkness and temperatures of minus 60 degrees, they reached Byrd. He was barely alive, suffering carbon monoxide poisoning from a faulty heater. It took 2 more months before a plane could fly in and evacuate him. Poulter spent the trip home thinking about one thing. If the base had been mobile, none of it would have happened. He wanted a vehicle that could serve as a moving laboratory, living quarters, and supply depot. Something that could cross crevasses, survive blizzards, and keep a crew of 5 alive for a year without resupply. The mission was to drive to the South Pole. Before 1939, only 2 expedition teams had ever reached the South Pole, and only one had made it back alive. When he got back to the United States, he started designing one. Poulter was the scientific director at the Armour Institute of Technology in Chicago. He spent 2 years on the design. The vehicle would be 55 feet 8 inches long, 19 feet 10 inches wide, and 16 feet tall. It would carry sleeping quarters for 4, a galley, a darkroom, a machine shop, a control cabin, and a scientific laboratory. On the roof, a Beechcraft stagger-wing biplane for aerial reconnaissance. Inside, 2,500 gallons of diesel for the vehicle and 1,000 gallons of aviation fuel for the plane. Enough food and supplies for a full year. The power system was diesel-electric. 2 Cummins H6 inline-6 diesel engines drove 2 generators that fed 4 electric hub motors, 1 per wheel. The combined output was 300 horsepower. Top speed on flat ground was 30 miles per hour. That was 8 horsepower per ton. A modern pickup truck has over 10 times that ratio. The tires were 10 feet in diameter, smooth with no tread. They were adapted from an existing design built for swamp buggies. He chose them deliberately. He believed treaded tires would pack with snow and ice and become useless. Smooth rubber would shed buildup and float across the surface. The wheels retracted independently into heated housings, warmed by engine exhaust to prevent the rubber from cracking at 80 below. The retraction system also solved the crevasse problem. The procedure was to approach a gap up to 15 feet wide, retract the front wheels, push the vehicle's long nose across on its belly, using the rear wheels, then extend the front wheels on the other side, retract the rear wheels, and pull the rest across. 20 steps. Poulter had thought of everything, except whether his tires would actually work on snow. In the spring of 1939, geopolitics accelerated the timeline. Germany had claimed a section of Antarctica called New Swabia. There were reports of plans for a U-boat base near Cape Horn. President Roosevelt authorized Byrd's 3rd expedition to establish American presence across 675,000 square miles of the continent. Congress approved $150,000 for the snow cruiser, at a time when a Ford sedan cost $800. Poulter had 6 months. He persuaded over 70 American companies to donate materials, equipment, and labor. The Pullman Company built the vehicle at their shops south of Chicago. Construction began August 8, 1939. 11 weeks later, it was done. On October 24, 1939, the snow cruiser rolled out of the Pullman factory for the first time. It had never been driven before that day. The ship to Antarctica was leaving Boston in 3 weeks. The vehicle had to be driven there, 1,020 miles. Its maximum speed was 20 miles per hour, and it traveled with a police escort on roads never designed for a 37-ton vehicle that required both lanes. The drive was supposed to take 8 days. It took nearly 3 weeks. The problem started immediately. In Indiana, it sideswiped a truck and a fuel pump was damaged. Outside Lima, Ohio, a faulty steering system sent the vehicle off a bridge on the Lincoln Highway and into a creek near the town of Gomer. It sat there for 3 days. 125,000 people came to see it stuck. In the Adirondacks, the crew discovered something strange. The snow cruiser climbed hills better in reverse. The rear wheels carried more weight and got more traction going backward. Nobody thought much of it at the time. When the snow cruiser reached Boston, it caused a 20-mile traffic jam, 70,000 cars. If it could not handle paved American highways, people asked what it would do on Antarctic ice. The newspapers called it the Penguin, the Turtle, the Thing. But with the expedition already funded and the press watching, there was no turning back. On November 15, 1939, it was loaded onto the USCGC North Star and shipped south. The snow cruiser arrived at Little America 3 on the Ross Ice Shelf in early January 1940. Built over a single Midwestern summer, it was touching snow for the first time. That's when it all fell apart. The unloading ramp buckled. A wheel punched through. Poulter hit full throttle and lurched the vehicle onto the ice. The crew cheered until it stopped moving. The smooth tires spun freely on the snow. They did not float across the surface. They sank through it, 3 feet deep. The snow could not support 105 kilopascals of tire pressure. It could handle 15 to 20 kilopascals from a wheeled vehicle. The snow cruiser delivered 5 times more than the ground could take. The tires did not shed snow. They polished it into ice, and then they spun on the ice they had just created. The crew bolted on 2 spare tires to double up the front axle. They chained the rear wheels. Nothing worked. The vehicle was trying to climb out of its own pit with every revolution. Poulter had tested the design on sand dunes near Gary, Indiana. Cold sand. He believed it simulated Antarctic snow. It did not. Sand is denser. It bears weight. Snow is a granular lattice that collapses under pressure. He realized the mistake too late. To get the ground pressure low enough to actually drive on Antarctic snow, the snow cruiser would have needed 20 to 28 tires. It had 4 tires. Then someone tried going in reverse. It worked. Barely. In reverse, the weight distribution shifted. The tires bit slightly better. The crew managed short trips backward through the snow. The longest was 92 miles, entirely in reverse. That was the snow cruiser's greatest achievement. 92 miles backwards across the Ross Ice Shelf. The vehicle designed to reach the South Pole could not reliably make it to the horizon. On January 24, 1940, Poulter left Antarctica. He planned to return with redesigned tires and lower gear ratios. He left Dr. Franklin Alton Wade in charge with a skeleton crew, including a marine radio operator named Felix Ferranto, a pilot, and a mechanic. They gave up trying to drive the snow cruiser. Instead, they piled snow and timber over it and turned it into a stationary research hut. The engine coolant circulated through the cabin walls. At 50 below zero outside, the crew slept under light blankets. They conducted seismology experiments, cosmic ray measurements, and ice core sampling. The most expensive research hut in Antarctic history worked fine. It just could not go anywhere. Then the world changed. Germany invaded France. The war in Europe escalated. The United States began preparing for its own entry. Funding for Antarctic exploration evaporated. On December 22, 1940, the expedition marked the snow cruiser's location with bamboo poles and left. Poulter never came back. He made notes on how to fix the vehicle, new tires, lower gearing. He intended to return after the war, but by 1945, the technology had moved on. Tracked vehicles, weasels, Tucker snowcats, machines that distributed weight across treads instead of concentrating it on 4 smooth rubber circles. Nobody wanted a 55-foot diesel-electric experiment anymore. In 1946, during Operation High Jump, an American expedition found the snow cruiser partially buried, but intact. They checked the tires, just needed air. A little maintenance and it could have run again. Nobody authorized the work. In 1958, during the International Geophysical Year, another team located it using the bamboo poles still poking through the snow. They dug down with a bulldozer, 23 feet of accumulated snow. When they opened the door, the interior was exactly as the crew had left it 18 years earlier. Papers on the desk, magazines, cigarettes. The cold had preserved everything like a time capsule. They measured the snowfall depth against the wheel height, took their data, and left. That was the last confirmed sighting of the Antarctic Snow Cruiser. After 1958, nobody reported seeing it again. The Ross Ice Shelf is not solid ground. It is a floating sheet of ice that moves, cracks, and calves into icebergs. In 1963, a massive section of the shelf broke off near Little America. Sailors on the USS Edisto spotted debris from the old base floating on an iceberg. Aircraft hangars, equipment, poles, but no snow cruiser. Researchers Ted Scambos and Clarence Novak published a paper in 2005 analyzing historic maps, ice flow data, and calving patterns. Their conclusion, the snow cruiser most likely separated from the main shelf on a smaller iceberg sometime before the 1963 calving event. It drifted north or west along the shelf edge, as bergs from the Bay of Whales typically do. Eventually, the ice melted or flipped. The snow cruiser is almost certainly at the bottom of the Southern Ocean. There was one other theory. During the Cold War, the Soviets maintained research stations in the area. Some speculated they found the snow cruiser and took it. No evidence supports this. It is just a story people tell because the alternative is less interesting. A 55-foot machine sitting silently on the ocean floor under thousands of feet of black water at the bottom of the world. The snow cruiser cost $150,000 in 1939. That's roughly $3 million today. It was designed for a 5,000-mile range. It managed only 92 miles, and it did all of it backwards. It was built in 11 weeks, driven 1,000 miles across America on roads it could barely fit, shipped 9,000 miles to Antarctica, and used as a shed. It carried a biplane it never launched for survey missions. It had a crevasse crossing system it never tested on an actual crevasse. Its designer envisioned it as the future of polar exploration. Within 5 years, every function it was supposed to perform was being done better by smaller, cheaper machines with treads. But here's the part that stays with you. When they opened that door in 1958, the magazines were still there. The cigarettes, the papers on the desk. The crew had lived in that machine through an Antarctic winter at 50 below, doing real science, sleeping comfortably, heated by engine coolant pumped through the cabin walls. The snow cruiser failed at what it was designed to do, but the men inside it made it work for what it could do. Then they walked away, marked the spot with bamboo poles, and assumed someone would come back. Nobody did. Not in time. The ice took it. That's the story of the Antarctic Snow Cruiser, the machine that could only drive backwards and then disappeared forever. If stories like this interest you, subscribe. We cover the machines that worked, failed, or quietly vanished.